And we continue at 1:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
John, sometimes we get some strange requests at the mailbag at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com, but I'm here to make people happy. George writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Can Randy put together Katie Porter's but replace votes with peanuts from Antonio Villaraigosa's?
Oh, peanut.
Sure.
Peanut.
Well, they used to serve them on airplanes. Then all of a sudden, I woke up one day and everyone on planet Earth has a peanut allergy, so now we get pretzels. I don't know. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of The Story Is, which airs weeknights from 9 to 11 Pacific on CNN. You can follow him on X at Elex_Michaelson. Elex Michaelson, welcome.
Thanks, John. What an introduction in terms of that video. I mean, that really got me fired up to be back on your show.
Peanut.
Thank you. Nobody can compete with Randy Wang.
Well, let's get started with this new poll that just came out regarding the California governor's race that shows a traffic jam at the top and then a second tier of candidates just below them, with Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco in the lead with 13%. Eric Swalwell, the congressman from the East Bay, in second place, a Democrat at 12%. Steve Hilton tied in second place at 12%, formerly of Fox News. Katie Porter, the former congresswoman from Orange County, at 11%. And then in the second tier, you've got the former mayor of L.A., Antonio Villaraigosa, at 5%, Tom Steyer, the billionaire, at 4%, and Javier Becerra, the former California attorney general, at 4%. Now, in the context of that, someone is going to have to do something to break away from the pack. This morning, the L.A. strategist, who's long been affiliated with former L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, tweeted the following. This is Michael Trujillo. I guess Swalwell can enjoy today, but folks know he slept with many of his interns while married, sexually harassed others while engaged, has a ton of weird texts late at night saved on former interns' phone still. He will have to answer this. There's a typo here. To answer for this later on during the campaign, right? Endorse at your own peril, people. You've been fully warned. Just doing my public service today.
Yeah, that last part, just about public service, right? That was the focus of that.
Well, I'll tell you, this is Antonio Villaraigosa. You know, the book, The Last Hurrah, it wasn't about Mayor Curley in Boston, but it was based on a character loosely based on him, was about the last campaign for a longtime politician in a big state, the state of Massachusetts, and his final campaign before retiring from politics. In the case of Antonio Villaraigosa, this is kind of the last hurrah for him. So if he's going to win a race statewide, it's this or bust. And as Randy said last hour, after that debacle of an interview that Katie Porter gave with that reporter, he bought 3 minutes worth of time in the Sacramento market, Antonio Villaraigosa did, and just kept replaying that interview in front of the people of Sacramento. And now his buddy, who's been affiliated with him as a strategist for many years, Michael Trujillo, is now out with this about Eric Swalwell. It looks like Antonio's swinging for the fences.
Well, look, having been around all of these people, nobody loves politics more than Antonio Villaraigosa. he is a political animal in the way of an old school politician who just loves being around people and working a room and shaking hands, and it energizes him like the way that it did for Bill Clinton, years ago in his prime, and Joe Biden many years ago in his prime, and other folks that just get like Tom LaBonge, somebody in LA City Council years ago that just like loves being out there and being with people. And so it's hard to imagine Antonio Villaraigosa walking out away from something that clearly gives him so much juice. I mean, I think, he's done consulting work and worked on other projects and all the rest of it since he's been out of office, which has been for many years now. But I don't think anything animates him as much as being in the arena. And so, you see him, if this is his last campaign, going for it. And what he's saying also if you actually listen to what he's saying, is a much more moderate version than what a lot of the Democratic Party is. He has not been lockstep with all the unions or, sort of all the traditional ways of doing politics in California. And from a public policy perspective, he's saying some interesting things as somebody who's, been in many different roles in the state for a long time. The challenge for him is that he is older and breaking through in a media environment where he doesn't have a ton of money. And I think, what that poll didn't tell you is that the average person in California, in response to all of those names, would say, who? What? There's a governor's race? I don't think this is top of mind for most people right now. And I think that none of those people are particularly famous. And when you think about the last three governors of California, Gavin Newsom, Jerry Brown, Arnold Schwarzenegger, were not only famous around the country, but were famous around the world. And we do not have that sort of figure in the race, at least not yet.
There has to be a level of resentment, too, among those figures who have been involved in state and local politics for a long time, where they're familiar with many of the subjects that the next governor will have to deal with. Maybe they have the right answers, maybe they don't, I don't know, but they at least know about them. And there's just a group of them that have been in this race longer than just about anyone else that get looked over time and time and time again by donors, by other politicians who give endorsements, by voters, by just about everyone involved in the process. I mean, if you're Antonio Villaraigosa and Javier Becerra and Betty Yee and Tony Thurmond, you've seen the public and you've seen the news media wait with bated breath on Kamala Harris and her decision. And then when she passed, everyone was waiting for what Alex Padilla would do. And now I guess Eric Swalwell jumps in the race, and he's the new shiny object right now, but people are still waiting to see what Rick Caruso and others will do. And it has to be insulting to a certain degree that you're there, you've been traveling the state, you've been doing the work, and instead of getting a second look, they're just acting like you don't exist.
Right. And also the people that you mentioned, especially Antonio Villaraigosa, have spent a lot of time in local politics, working either on state issues or issues in cities. And Eric Swalwell and Katie Porter are best known for their time in Washington, not dealing with a lot of these local issues. And the job of being a Congress member in a body of 435 people, especially a Congress member in the minority, a body of 435 people, is very, very different than being the chief executive in a state of 40 million people. It's different, and you're dealing with different issues. I mean, I did the first sit-down interview with Eric Swalwell on The Story Is after he announced. He announced on Jimmy Kimmel, who asked him a follow-up question about his beard and then went to commercial break to ask about any issues. And when I was doing the interview, I didn't know what he was going to say about a lot of these policy issues about the state because he's never asked about them, because that's not what he does. He hasn't been in those issues. And so to me, it was like a blank slate. Like, what is he going to say? And similarly, I did the first sit down with Katie Porter. I didn't know what she was going to say about a lot of these issues because she hadn't talked about them before. And so a lot of the folks that you mentioned have been talking about these issues for many, many years, and yet seem to not be breaking through, at least not yet.
And if you're Eric Swalwell, you represent a very safe seat in the East Bay. No Republican is ever going to beat you. He beat Pete Stark to win that seat. That was the last competitive race he was involved in. If it weren't for his escapades on cable news and on the floor of the House of Representatives or in the committee hearings, most of us probably would have no idea who he was. And he certainly hasn't been vetted to the level at which candidates running for high office like governor of California get vetted. I mean, he ran for president at one point, but he was just in that race for a cup of coffee. He was in, he was out. He made an issue of Joe Biden's age, which created some headlines, but that was essentially it. And if you are Michael Trujillo and you are Antonio Villaraigosa, you're probably, given the fact that you've been around Democratic Party politics for a long time, you're aware of the rumors, you're aware of the stories, you're aware of what people do when no one's looking, and certainly they probably are aware of some of Eric Swalwell's failings. I don't think you would put a tweet out like that would, to my eye, be defamatory if untrue and could result in a lawsuit and all kinds of problems unless you were 100% convinced that you had the goods on him. Eric Swalwell, given the fact that he hasn't been vetted yet, this may not be a fun process for him.
Right. And if he stayed in that House seat, he would never have to deal with any of this. For somebody like, I'm not suggesting that Alex Padilla has any skeletons in his closet. By all accounts, he seems like one of the cleanest guys in the world. But think about, people were like, why would Alex Padilla not run? Because of stuff like this. Right? I mean, Alex Padilla gets to stay in the Senate, run in elections where he's barely challenged, and not really have to travel that much up and down the state unless he wants to, not have to do a ton of media unless he wants to, gets to spend more time with his family, and doesn't have to worry about all this stuff. I mean, you think about, with all of these Democrats who all know each other and all have worked with each other and all have similar consultants who all know each other and all the rest of it, there's just so much opposition research that they're going to try to dump on each other in this race, which is the most open race that we've had in a generation. This kind of thing doesn't happen very often in California. And you think about our last governor's races. I mean, Newsom was a clear favorite. Jerry Brown was a clear favorite. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a clear favorite. I mean, we haven't had something like this with all of these people all coming out at the same time.
This week, we found out that Rick Caruso hired A. Smith, who was the consultant that ran not only Gavin Newsom's campaign for governor, but Jerry Brown's as well, and worked with Kamala Harris and others throughout the years. That certainly would be a strong indication that he is going to run for governor.
Although he hired A. Smith last time when he ran for mayor.
That's true.
So I don't know. And what's interesting, though, is that how'd that work out for him?
Worked out great for A. Smith.
Yeah. Right. So, I always heard reports that he was frustrated by the way his consultants handled that whole situation, where he spent, over $100 million of his own money to lose by almost double digits in the race for mayor. So that's an interesting choice.
The field of candidates running for governor, many of them, including many of the Democrats, have been openly critical of current California Governor Gavin Newsom for not attending the funerals in Stockton, not physically being present there after the awful shooting that took place in that community. And Gavin Newsom is instead in New York City talking about national issues, going after Donald Trump, going after Wall Street, going after investors, talking about national issues to a national audience. What do you make of that decision to skip going to Stockton?
Well, look, I mean, it's been pretty clear that he's been focused on national issues for a long time now. I don't think that's anything particularly new. And he has prioritized a lot of these big trips, these big swings, these big moments. And, it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to position yourself as a leading candidate for president of the United States, which it certainly seems like his goal is, it's working for him. His poll numbers are up. His fundraising is up. If you look at a lot of the polls that shows him as a front runner. I mean, Jonathan Martin wrote a piece calling him the front runner for president. So I don't know how many people in South Carolina or New Hampshire are that focused on the Stockton funeral 2 years from now. And so maybe he's doing the stuff that he thinks is more beneficial for him. The problem, of course, is, the job of being California governor is hard, and to really do it right, you got to be here.
It'll be interesting to see what happens between Gavin Newsom and the Democratic electeds in California as he neglects California and paints himself as a national figure. Because if that's what you're going to do, it's not just what happened in Stockton that you're going to miss out on. You're going to miss out on all of the other Stocktons that are going to happen in between now and the next election. And at a certain point, that frustration is going to boil over into something that's public, because if you're the Democratic assemblyman from Stockton or mayor of Stockton or whatever, you're going to lash out at a certain point. And when they start doing that over and over and over again, that's also not going to be a good look. I mean, at one point in time, I know this is hard to believe, but at one point in time, John Fetterman was even talked about as being a potential candidate on the national stage. But the people, the Democrats in Pennsylvania, hate him. And when they started going after him back in Pennsylvania, that's when the bloom came off the rose real fast. And it seems like Gavin Newsom is at risk of that happening if he starts to upset these people by doing things like skipping out on going to Stockton.
Well, and you saw when the scandal broke about Dana Williamson, Newsom's former chief of staff, that there were a lot of Democrats in Sacramento who I think have been privately sort of jealous or frustrated with the governor for a lot of the things you just said, who seemed very happy that scandal was breaking, even if they didn't say so publicly, as evidence of that. In fairness to the governor, I did interview the mayor of Stockton the other night live on our show, The Story Is, and she said that the governor was very helpful, that he was in communication with her and was working with her on some issues on the statewide front to try to help Stockton. So I'll just put that out there, too.
And he called her by phone?
That's what she said, yeah.
I see. All right. Elex Michaelson, host of The Story Is, which airs weeknights from 9 to 11 on CNN. What's coming up on the big show tonight?
Well, do you know what is the most watched movie in the history of Netflix?
K-pop Demon Hunters.
There you go. We have the director of K-pop Demon Hunters coming on tonight to talk about the worldwide phenomenon. 400 million views.
Oh, my.
Which is kind of crazy. But we're also we're talking politics. We have my pals Melanie Mason and Peter Hamby are coming on. And there is going to be some news in regards to the governor's race that's breaking tonight on the show. I can't say what it is, but there's going to be something tonight.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, that sounds like a tease to me.
Pamela Price is running for that seat, too.
Where's the audio? Yeah.
I think we have a whole file on Pamela Price.
She called me a crime boss.
There you go.
Elex Michaelson, I'll be watching tonight on CNN. Thanks so much.
Thanks for playing me off with that. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. Could be the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. Do a Google on YouTube. More people every day are listening to and watching their podcasts on YouTube. Search for the KABC app, the KSFO app, the KMJ Now app. We're on that station Saturdays at 2. Either way, you're going to hear weird drops like this.
Peanut.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Here's the big one, everyone. 790 KABC welcomes Guns N' Roses, the World Tour 2026 at the Rose Bowl, September 5th. Tickets on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, as we discussed with Elex Michaelson, despite the fact that there was a horrific and fatal shooting that went on in Stockton, California Governor Gavin Newsom didn't find it to be important enough to cancel his trip to New York.
New York City?
I feel like it's a Pace Picante commercial, or what was it, La Victoria?
I think it was Pace. So Gavin Newsom went to New York to sit down at the New York Times' Pitch Book Festival and had an hour-long conversation with Andrew Ross Sorkin. For more, here's Fox 40's Eitan Wallace.
So Fox 40 Capitol reporter Eitan Wallace has a closer look at Newsom's trip, including comments he made about a potential 2028 run for the White House.
Yeah, he doesn't care about Stockton or the rest of California.
Couldn't care less.
Gavin Newsom is here, everybody.
In New York City, California Governor Gavin Newsom kicked off his latest multi-day out-of-state trip, beginning at the New York Times Deal Book Summit, featuring business and political leaders.
Hello.
During this nearly hour-long Q&A conversation,
I listened to that whole thing, and I didn't find one clip worth bringing to you.
You know, as a termed-out state politician with eyes on other things, he has no reason to perform at all, no motivation. Gavin Newsom has become the Anthony Rendon of politics.
Not to be confused with Anthony Rendon.
No, the former speaker.
the topic of Newsom's own political future came up multiple times.
The Democrats' presidential nominee.
Why is so much focus on this?
In 2028.
Despite that exchange, Newsom did address his...
You love the grunt where, I hate this. I hate being asked this question.
You know what I would have said if I was the guy interviewing him? Oh, I hate it when you guys ask me about running for president. Why do you always ask me about running for president? Because you're here and not in Stockton.
Despite that exchange, Newsom did address his potential presidential ambitions.
Have you ever thought about it? I said I'd be lying. I hate those politicians. So I haven't thought about it.
Boy, he's extra gravelly in New York.
Didn't he used to say that he had sub-zero interest in running for president?
Yes, he did. Many, many, many times. I believe that statement was to Elex Michaelson.
Have you ever thought about it? I said I'd be lying. I hate those politicians. So I haven't thought about the future in that respect.
Okay, so how much are you thinking about it then?
But not to the degree that you think, and perhaps others that are more cynical. I'm serious about this. For me, it was all about 2025.
Well, how'd you get your name out there?
And you're going on all the national shows and the national platforms.
It was about fighting fire with fire.
He found a way to take an off-year election and make him the main character of all of it.
But you have to be careful because sometimes stars burn out.
It was about fighting fire with fire. It was about being accountable, not just rhetorically, but substantively, to address what Donald Trump is trying to do to this country. He's trying to wreck this country.
That was one of many times Newsom criticized President Donald Trump during this Q&A.
The guy literally calling people the R word. Piggy, it's just not.
Well, trust me, if our company didn't have certain policies, it would be every other word out of my mouth in regard to you.
That's one of the ones that's changed over the years. I used to work with radio people that use that word constantly. In fact, I used to work for a guy who would use that word and combine it with the current LA mayor at the time, Villaraigosa.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah. That was one of Adam Carolla's best hits.
Piggy.
But yeah, no one can use that word anymore.
Piggy, it's just not. This is, we're better than this.
Asked whether he's concerned issues facing California, including homelessness, housing, and a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit could hurt his possible presidential ambitions, Newsom clapped back, noting the state is the fourth largest economy in the...
Is Eitan watching a lot of Real Housewives?
Newsom clapped back.
Could be.
Newsom clapped back, noting the state is the fourth largest economy in the world. He had this to say to critics.
Newsom said, sashay away.
Newsom threw the proverbial Chardonnay in the face of his critics.
Newsom clapped back, noting the state is the fourth largest economy in the world. He had this to say to critics.
There's California derangement syndrome.
What about the criticism of California from Californians?
Yes, this is a show that is local to California that talks about California subjects, and every day we fill 3 hours up with all of your failures.
There's California derangement syndrome.
Occasionally we talk about how no one goes to Vegas.
That is true.
There's California derangement syndrome. It really is.
Newsom's visit marks his second multi-day out-of-state trip in the last 4 weeks. Last month, he was in Brazil for the United Nations COP30 climate conference, and on his current trip, he'll next head to Washington, D.C. to meet with federal officials and call on the Trump administration to provide additional federal funding for L.A.'s wildfire recovery. He'll then head to
It's also probably house hunting.
Meeting with donors, meeting with electeds, trying out all the restaurants.
He'll then head to Arizona for a Democratic Governors Association meeting. Republicans criticizing Newsom, accusing him of putting national ambitions over California.
Instead of being governor of California, he wakes up every morning and try to come up with a new formula to try to get the nomination to be president of the United States.
And the governor is scheduled to return to California.
That's what your mic used to sound like.
Remember that one trip to Las Vegas?
Yes, I do.
And the governor is scheduled to return to California on Saturday. At the state capitol, covering local news that matters, Eitan Wallace, Fox 40 News.
So there you go. Gavin Newsom gallivanting in New York City instead of doing his current job.
And speaking of his current job, the people who would like to be the next governor of California did something that Gavin Newsom didn't have time for. They went to Stockton after the shooting.
And they all criticized Gavin for not showing up.
Democrat and Republican.
For more, here's KCRA3 and Ashley Zavala.
In the meantime, a handful of candidates running for California governor are weighing in on that mass shooting in Stockton.
KCRA3 political director Ashley Zavala joins us now. So, Ashley, what do they have to say about this? What's their reaction?
Yeah, I mean, from both sides of the aisle, all those candidates were horrified to hear about this. Those candidates spoke for about an hour at the convention center forum hosted by the California School Board Association in downtown Sacramento today. 5 of them on stage, Republican Sheriff Chad Bianco and Democrats State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond.
Why is he still in this race?
I don't know. He's termed out and he has nothing else to do.
Former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former State Assemblyman Ian Calderon, and former...
That campaign didn't catch any kind of fire.
I keep forgetting that he's running.
He announced in August, saw no bump.
And former state controller Betty Yee. While the topic of the Stockton mass shooting did not come up on stage there, they did all talk to me after about it. I also asked them about Governor Gavin Newsom's response to this so far. The governor did call the mayor, but has not gone down to Stockton physically, and he also left the state for the rest of the week. Here's how they all responded.
I believe the governor, he should have gone down to Stockton. I exchanged messages with...
Okay, actually, I think this is Ian Calderon.
That's Ian Calderon, yeah.
It was, usually I'm listening to these things when I'm walking around the neighborhood, and I know everyone's voices pretty well. I couldn't spot this one.
I believe the governor, he should have gone down to Stockton. I exchanged messages with the mayor of Stockton.
And she said, who dis?
And she told me how horrible this is for her community and the fear of retaliation and what that was going to mean for her and her community. And this is an area in the Central Valley that already feels like they're flyover country. Nobody cares about us. You fly over us. You only come here when you're campaigning. They can't continue to feel like that. And they need to know that they can have a relationship with the governor and the state, that when something significantly tragic like this happens.
I'll tell you what I did when I was mayor.
Oh, that's Tony.
There you go. You know that voice.
Mr. Peanut.
I'll tell you what I did when I was mayor.
Thank you.
I always showed up. I showed up when a cop was shot. I showed up when families lost loved ones. Actually, when I was a council member, I went to every single homicide in the 2 years that I was a council member in my district. When I was mayor, there were too many.
That's not a good thing to say.
No, I don't know if I'd phrase it that way.
When I was mayor, there were just too many murders to attend every single one of those.
Bullets were being sprayed everywhere, and there's only 24 hours in the day.
In my district, when I was mayor, there were too many, but we reduced it to 1950 levels, as I said, but I think it's important to show up. And I'm not criticizing anyone. I don't know where he was at, but I could tell you, for me, you show up.
Why isn't the leader of the state there saying that this absolutely must stop? And
This is Bianco.
Why isn't the leader of the state there saying that this absolutely must stop and that the perpetrators will be held accountable? As the governor of California, I absolutely would make sure that I was there. I would make sure.
Shang, you want in on the assist?
As the governor of California, I absolutely would make sure that I was there. I would make sure that I'm there for the families, and we will be.
You heard that. Chad Bianco absolutely would show up, except to a scheduled radio interview.
Twice.
As the governor of California, I absolutely would make sure that I was there. I would make sure that I'm there for the families, and we will be doing everything we can to make sure that California is the safest state in the country. This selfishness of our elected officials, that they only do things that benefit themselves, and sometimes they don't have the ability to sacrifice their own ambitions, his vacation or his political speech that he was going to give in another part of the country, because
that rainforest wasn't going to look at itself.
Oh, he's moved on from the rainforest. He's in New York City talking to Andrew Sorkin.
His vacation or his political speech that he was going to give in another part of the country because a community in California was suffering, it says a lot.
I certainly would make my way to...
Oh, boy. Betty's still running?
Oh, yes. The last time we heard from her, she was trying to explain to Piers Morgan that biological females had an inherent advantage over male athletes in track and field.
I certainly would make my way to be sure that, we're showing our support for those who have lost loved ones and lost community members, but also begin the conversation of really understanding, why does this still happen? I think it's going to take all of us, law enforcement, certainly government at all levels, but also really the community, because it's really the partnership, I think, among all of us to really be on alert about how these things can happen that are going to keep our community safe. So.
Would you have...
When she can't sleep at night, does she just look at herself in the mirror and start talking?
And I forget where I saw this, because she's been elected for a long time. Before she was controller, I think she was on the Board of Equalization. And she was driving over one of the bridges in Northern California, and she got hit by a driver who was high on marijuana, and she got rear-ended. And I was told, or maybe I read it somewhere, that it really screwed up her neck and her back. She was in really bad shape for a really long time. And it was one of those things where impaired drivers on alcohol, it's easy to measure. You can tell how much someone had to drink by finding their blood alcohol content. With marijuana, it's a lot harder to measure, and she was one of the victims of someone who was driving while high, and she hasn't been the same since.
Betty got elected to the Board of Equalization in 2004.
A long time ago.
How them term limits working out?
Would you have gone down there, though, to meet with...
I would have. Yes, absolutely.
Well, Shangy, we're going to need you one more time.
Would you have gone down there, though, to meet with...
I would have. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Superintendent of Public Instruction and Democratic candidate Tony Thurmond and I spoke on the phone after that event, and he echoed some of what was said there. He told me he's offered resources to help the schools in that area. He also said he's getting in touch with people down in Stockton to see if his presence there would be helpful.
It wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't. What do you need from the state superintendent of public instruction? You think they need finger paint in Stockton right now?
And what more he can do.
It's interesting that the candidates across party lines all agree on that one thing, that he should have been there. Has the governor reacted to those comments from the candidates?
Yeah, so I ever since the shooting broke out, I've been reaching out to the governor's office every single day just to check in, to see if he has an update, anything to add. I did give them a heads up that this is the reaction that we got from the candidates who are running for governor at this point. He has been in New York City for the New York Times Deal Book Summit. The shooting did
did not come up during his appearance there. But again, I'll keep checking in.
Well, that's why you go to the East Coast. They don't care what's happening in California. They never did, and they never will.
No, from their point of view, we're a suburb of Guam.
Keep checking in. He has an appearance in Washington, D.C. tomorrow to meet with federal officials. We don't know what that schedule exactly entails yet.
Yeah, see if we can get more from him.
Yeah.
And we're going to have much more reaction on the shooting in Stockton throughout our newscast. You can stay updated on new developments.
So there you go. The candidates for governor are the ones that showed up to that forum in Sacramento, going after Gavin for not showing up to Stockton.
I want to go back to a point that Elex Michaelson made when he said that Gavin Newsom is now a national figure who regards himself as someone worthy of the national stage. And if people get upset about him not showing up in Stockton after the shooting in California, how is that going to hurt him in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, and other states that vote early? Here's the problem for Gavin Newsom. He is a guy who is an effete gentry class winemaker, married into a very rich family at a time when Democrats are universally going after rich people, billionaires to be exact. And if you think about the framing, if you're a Democratic rival to Gavin Newsom in a primary, how you can make hay out of this. He left Stockton, he left California to go sit down with Andrew Ross Sorkin in New York. Who is he? Well, he's the morning anchor on CNBC. He's the guy that covers the financial news. He's the guy that the rich people go to get their news. And he's talking to Andrew Ross Sorkin and his audience of very rich people on Wall Street. Who got shot in Stockton? 3 children and one 21-year-old, all ethnic minorities. So when the minorities get shot and killed in your state, that's not important. But it is important to get on a plane and go across the country to New York and talk to rich people on Wall Street. If you're a Democrat running against Gavin Newsom, you can do something with this. He doesn't care about us complaining about it back in California because he's not going to run for a state office again. He's termed out. He is running for president, and if he gets labeled as someone who is not sensitive to minority children being murdered and rather talk to rich people on Wall Street, that's not a good look for a Democratic candidate in a Democratic primary, especially in a state like South Carolina. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. All right, we've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. When we return, we've got 2 stories out of Oakland that won't surprise you because it's Oakland.
I said, hell no, baby boy. Let me get up on out of here.
But if the Dateline was anywhere else, it would be alarming. Stick around and find out, or as Pamela Price says, well, she uses a word I can't use on the radio.
You mean this one?
F around and find out.
That's it.